Welcome back to the Galaxy Channel, everybody. So great to have you back here for another episode. And this week, we have a very special episode because we have a very exciting guest outside of Canada, even all the way from the United States of America, if you can believe it. We have Charlie Birch, everybody.
Hi.
Charlie, welcome to the show. It's really great to have you here and really pertinent conversation I think that we're about to have. We were working on a project recently and you've recently launched a bit of a new brand, right? And
Yes.
as a graphic designer and somebody who does a lot of branding, I really admire the new brand that you've been working on, and just wanted to talk a little bit about that and kind of maybe selfishly use it as a bit of an example for some of my clients, but also some entrepreneurs out there. So does that all sound good to you?
That sounds good to me. I have a similar use for this recording in mind. I said, I'm going to pump this into my networks and maybe I'll make my own job a little bit easier because I work on the branding with my clients as well. So let's do it. I'm excited.
Yeah, we're serving a few things at once here, putting out some good content, having a bit of fun. I think it's going to be a fun interview and also educating the audience out there a little bit. So that should be pretty good. Perhaps a good place to start is to talk a little bit about your new brand, right? So I guess it's a couple of months now since launch, right? Tell everybody a little bit about Third Eye Web Strategies.
Yeah, sure. So, there's a couple of, I guess I'll talk about like the rebrand a little bit because, like you mentioned, it's a new brand for me. So prior to Third Eye, my company was called Charlie Birch Consulting, and we do a similar body of work, which is a web design with a focus on branding and a focus on local, physically located brick and mortar style businesses. But my son was born last June.
Mm-hmm.
I got married the year before that. And I've been trying to decide if I want to change my last name to be the same as my husband and my son. So that kind of got me thinking about like, maybe I should move away from a personal brand and not have Charlie Birch Consulting. And so I started playing around with some ideas about different brand names and company names. And in the process of doing that, a couple other things happened. And I decided, in addition to learning how to be a mom and work at the same time, I started to connect with people like yourself and realized that my clients often needed additional complementary services to the ones that I provided. And so as I started to explore the idea of kind of expanding the business from just website design to incorporate other contractors like yourself, graphic design and content creation and things like that, I thought it might feel weird for my customers and my clients to be like, oh, well, I hired Charlie Birch Consulting. Why are you sending me over to, this other person?
Some of the issues that can come up with a personal brand, right?
Right. So I decided to ditch the personal brand. And then in the process of doing that, I also wanted the company name to have more clarity about what we did. So Third Eye Web Strategies is kind of twofold in that regard because we are much more than a web design studio. Not that there's anything wrong with being simply a web design studio, but what I've found with this audience that I work with Main Street businesses is that there's a lot of conversations that need to happen about web strategy as kind of like a higher level. Mm-hmm. And when you're working with business owners, you also have to be always tracking like they're your customer, but you also have to be tracking like that they have customers. And so I came around to this idea of having like the third eye, like by the time my eye or my team's eyes are on things, it's the third perspective, right? They have their customer perspective, they have their perspective, and then there's our perspective coming in and adding that additional strategic angle and value to the
Nice.
conversation. So that's how I kind of came up with the name. And then because we are, I mean, I'm not like a tech company, right? Like I don't have an app or anything that I'm going to get like some VC funding for, but we do work in the realm of technology in terms of helping our customers set up
Hmm.
and leverage technology in their businesses that are traditionally more offline. And so when I was looking into, the brand colors, I went with the turquoise, which is kind of a dominant color on the website, if you see,
Hmm.
which is often associated with technology and kind of modernity, if that's a word, modernity. I don't know if that's a word.
Modernity is a
Modernity.
word.
And then I also wanted to, at the same time, ground it into the tangible kind of real life in person nature of the work that my customer base does, which is why I went with kind of the darker olive army green to kind of reference the earth. And then because this audience also has, especially this past year, been really hit hard by the pandemic,
Hmm.
I decided to go with a cheery, sunny yellow color, which also has some cool conversion benefits on the website. You'll notice that I use the button color is always yellow because there's a lot of cool conversion research and user data about
Nice.
buttons being yellow and high conversion rates. So that was kind of the strategy with the colors, and then I decided to go into the illustration space, which is what brought me to work with you for the last project you referenced, because um, I don't I don't have like, again, I don't want to be a personal brand. So like taking a bunch of pictures of me all the time isn't on brand. But
Hmm.
also I wanted to kind of again bridge that divide between technology and Main Street. And so I thought a fun way to do that would be to use illustration to kind of reference like the modern tech online thing that you see a lot of now with the illustration, but to do the illustrations more realistic. So all the skin tones are accurate, all of the hair colors are accurate and diverse. That was also important to me. And the setting of the illustrations is Main Street. And that also creates a way for me to reference and set the context of the brand without having to, have photo shoots of Main Street, and it gives me some flexibility to work with it. So I'm going to pause, and I think that answered your question.
You're a great guest. Everybody out there will love to have Charlie on their YouTube or their podcast or whatever, because she basically just answered all of the pretty much ran through my question list here. I might have a few things left, but no, that was awesome. A couple things that I want to kind of draw out from what you're talking about there, and maybe just like concentrate things a little bit. But two of the things that you brought up there that I think are crucial, absolutely crucial to starting a business, right? And starting a brand of any type. And really, if you're like starting a new brand or rebranding, I think it's like a huge opportunity to focus so much on these things. Number one, you have a target demographic that you are like so sure of what it is, right? You're like, I'm doing this business, these are our customers, right? We're targeting this specific group of people. The other part of it is like the strategic element, right? Where, okay, we're coming up with the branding, we're coming up with the name, and in looking at the target demographic, once you have that, once you have a very firm target demographic in mind, then you start thinking about, strategically, what can I do with this brand to reach them, right? And even to the point of like, you're saying, oh, these small business owners, it's a diverse crowd, they have like these certain values, and putting like elements of that into the branding, right? Yeah, that's kind of
Yeah, I
ringing
mean,
true for you.
yeah. So I'd actually want to clarify that piece about the diversity a little
Yeah,
bit because it's kind of the next layer of the branding
nice.
that I really like to work with on my end with my client base. So yes, the my customer base is diverse, but also I think it's really important with this audience of the Main Street audience. There's a lot of conversation about revitalization and historic preservation, and how do we create economic opportunity on Main Street, and how do we compete with e-commerce and stay relevant. And so a big piece of that, and part of my background is in psychology, is in diversity and inclusion work. And so I wanted to make sure that the values that I have around creating main streets or recreating main streets or preserving main streets, what's good about them doesn't get overly whitewashed, because I do notice that happens when we start to look at, and this is maybe a US based thing, but I can't speak for Canada, but like we have we have an entirely sorted history here in the United
We have a
States.
colonial history here as well, for sure.
Yeah, so we have to be really careful not to overly romanticize the past when we talk about historic preservation and revitalizing Main Street, and making sure that the imagery that's going out, the marketing material that's going out from my end, from my customers, and into the world, that's drawing people into Main Street and asking them to engage with this community, is relevant to the consumers that are trying to be drawn in. And so if all of the pictures of all of the people shopping on Main Street are, very hetero and very white, that's going to undermine what we're trying to do, which is create an inclusive space. And so when I was working with my other graphic designer, because I worked with you on some of the project and I had worked with a local person on some other elements, it was very important to me that the illustrations have a diverse skin tones. And actually she sent me one little scene and I sent it back to her because I said, let's you have all the skin tones represented, but they're not integrated. Like you have the Black people over there, and you have some Indian people people over there, and you have the white people over there. And like, I want to make sure that we don't just have people kind of hanging out together, but not integrating, because I think that's a really important thing that gets lost in marketing, especially companies with lower budgets who are relying on stock and clip art libraries. It takes really clear intention to find, you have to pay attention to find stock photography that's high quality and diverse. Like if you just open up Canva and, just grab the first good picture you see, before you know it, you have a whole month worth of social media content that's just white people, and that's not the kind of Main Street I want to contribute to the success of. So that was I just want to get into the values under the brand instead of just the aesthetic.
For sure. That's a big part of it, right? Is understanding that target demographic, and then making the brand like very, very intentional. And what you just brought up there is a perfect example of that, right? Like if you had sort of an idea of who your target demographic is, it might be business owners, or it might be, whoever needs my services, and you don't have like a precise idea. Here you have such a precise idea about them that you're like, you understand their values, and you understand how they're going to perceive the messages that you're putting out as well, right? Like that's a really important part of it, of having a strategic and intentional brand, like I think that you've built here with Third Eye. Like so interesting that you brought up as well, like the psychological elements of it, right? Like if you don't really know your target demographic and you're trying to put marketing out there, like you could do real damage to yourself just by we see it so many times, right? Especially with big brands. They'll do something that they think is great. They're like, oh, this is wonderful and everyone's going to love this, right? And then it comes off as like completely tone deaf, right? So
the tone deafity. That's not a word. I'm making up words today.
You're making up words. Tone deafness might be a word. I don't know.
Tone deafity is not a word. Sure. But yeah, I think it's really important to be intentional. And like you said, know your target audience. And this is something like, this is why we're here having this conversation, because we're in alignment on this opinion. But I have,
And just to hang out, I'm having
yeah,
fun.
and just to hang out. But I'm sure like you ask your clients, I ask my clients, and I
Yes, yes.
often hear from them, well, like
Oh, it's
I
confession
want to
time.
serve everybody, or I want to, whoever's paying. And what it's, I think, important to understand about branding too is, um, especially for smaller businesses, like I have a team that I work with of contractors, as do you.
Yeah.
But, at the end of the day, this is me and my work and my family, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I have
Mm-hmm.
a limit to the amount of work that I can do. And so
That's
when
right.
you create an intentional brand, it's not only about um, the ability to quickly connect with someone who's willing to pay you.
Oh yeah.
It's about quickly connecting with somebody you want to work with,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And there are people in the Main Street community that are going to be turned off by a conversation about diversity and inclusion.
Yeah.
And there are people who are going to be excited about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, no
That's
surprise, who do I want to work with, right?
right.
And
Right.
similarly, there are people who, on a less charged topic, perhaps, there are people that I work with who, don't really want to talk about the branding. They just want to
Yeah.
figure out how can they get more transactions. And
Yeah.
what I'm trying to do with Third Eye is help people understand, one, yes, your brick and mortar business does need a website.
Yeah.
But it's not, the purpose of that website is not going to be to beat Amazon at e-commerce, or like, right? It's not like, you're
Yeah.
never going to win that battle. And that doesn't mean you don't need a website, and it
Yeah.
doesn't mean you should close your store. The
Mm-hmm.
purpose
Mm-hmm.
of your website is to showcase the experience that you offer your customers,
Yeah.
that's in person,
Yeah.
and to remind them that, like, yeah, e-commerce is good for some stuff, but also you're a human, and
Yeah.
you need to leave your house, and you need to be in a community, and you need to talk to people. And that the way to do that online is to tap into sensory cues and use, intentional language that paints a picture of an experience, instead of just like smacking a bunch of pictures of your products onto your website and like shoving it down people's throat. Like I follow so many Main Street programs
Yeah.
on my social media, and you see the Chamber of Commerce, for example, different chambers will want to support the local businesses, and some go about that by telling the story of the business that they
Mm-hmm.
want to
Mm-hmm.
support, and some go about that by like posting a picture of a mug that's for sale. Like, which post do you think drives more traffic to that business? The
Right.
first
Right.
one, right? So
Obviously.
like,
Yeah.
helping people understand that, like, yes, it can feel kind of indirect or indulgent or extra to focus on your branding, or like if you talk about the story and the values, it can feel like you're going over here when you
Yeah.
want, like, obviously you have to make money, right?
Mm-hmm.
But people don't buy your mug, they buy the experience of walking into your store and
Right. Right.
looking for the mug and talking to you, and like, oh, it's by a local artisan
So
who makes
true.
clay, like all those things. And that's what the branding is about. It's about the
Yeah.
feelings. And similarly, like, and this is I have this idea for like a little mini Instagram, like, daily video series called I'm Saying. That's what I'm playing with right now.
I'm
Like, I'm
saying.
saying, because you think about, if you are going to go to the bank, you're a
Mm-hmm.
business owner, right? Like, if you're watching this, right? So you're going to go to the bank and apply for a loan. Are you going to pay attention to what you wear to the bank to make an impression on the banker who's going to like see if you're legit or not?
Mm-hmm.
Of course
Yeah.
you are. But
Right.
are you
Right.
paying attention to the outfit you put on your digital presence? Like, that's what a brand is. It's the way you choose to present yourself online or in person. Like, does your website match your store? Does your social media match your website? Like, help people know that's you. and put your best foot forward, put your best page forward, put your best picture forward. Like, take the time to be consistent, because those little consistencies help people know you. They
Yeah.
help people trust you, and they help people like you. And I mean, that's not original. No, like, trust. Like, I didn't make that up. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? Like, I'm
Copyright,
not, I'm not
copyright, Charlie
reinventing the
Birch.
wheel. So that's what I think. There's so many reasons to be on purpose and to take the time. And once you do, it makes everything simpler. Like,
So true.
every time you decide, I need to make a new social media post, you don't have to spend hours picking the font from the list of fonts that are
Yeah.
available in the template you're using. You don't have to guess the colors that you want. Just use your colors and just use your fonts and just use
Hmm.
your image styles.
Yeah.
It's just
And
theme and
write a message to the
variation.
person who you're talking to, the audience
Right.
you're talking
It's
to,
just
right?
theme and variation.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to keep making things up. You just have to keep giving things, you just have to keep giving value, but you don't have to keep
Exactly. Exactly.
creating over and over and over again.
See, this is great. This is why I wanted to have Charlie here. She's basically, preaching to the choir right now. But for some of the listeners out there, like, I hope that your ears are perking up and that you're paying attention to the fact that, like, these things, like, your brand and your digital presence and whatnot, right? They're not just nice things that are fun to do. It's like these are helping you meet business goals, right? It's like
Right.
you're creating situations where the rest of your work is going to be so much easier, right? You're going to be meeting people who you already want to work with, people who are like-minded, who you'll be able to work with, and people who you'll be able to serve. You'll be able to help them achieve their goals, right? Because you haven't just brought in a bunch of, like, randoms and then you try to make it work, right? It's just so much better if it's intentional. And yeah, great to have you here to talk about that. We're getting to a pretty long YouTube video here, but I did want to ask one more question. Super low ball. So if that's cool, you got time for one more?
Yes, I do.
Okay. All right. It's a low ball one. I'm warning you. So Charlie, do Main Street businesses really need a website?
Yes. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. And here's why. Because I hear this a lot from people that have been in business for a while. They're like, oh, well, all my business comes from word of mouth. All my business comes from people walking by. We've been here 10 generations. Like, that's all fine.
Mm-hmm.
And the business that you got from those channels, right? Like, the business that came from word of mouth, and the business that walked in your door, and the business that you've had for 10 years, but you don't know all the business you're losing because you
Yeah.
lost it,
Yeah.
right? And so even if you're just focused on your local demographic and you're not interested in attracting people from far away, just have a website.
Yeah.
Because it's not a big deal to make one. Like, if you really
Doesn't even
want
cost
to,
a lot of money, really, to
I
have
mean,
one.
yeah. So if you want to work with a designer, it is an investment, but there are really great tools and resources to just get something on the internet,
Mm-hmm.
just
Mm-hmm.
something on your Google business listing that's not a picture of, like, a questionably closed or open storefront. Like, just make it, because people are looking for you. 63 to 89% of people start their search for a purchase online, even if it's going to end.
I make decisions from Google reviews, like,
Right.
always.
Right. I mean, that's what our first collaboration was, your article
Oh
about
yeah,
the
yeah.
importance of a Google review, right?
We
So,
know I
like,
like Google Maps. Yeah.
but the other thing is that the difference between an e-commerce or online business and an in-person brick and mortar business is in-person experience. And like I was saying before, you're never going to beat out e-commerce. Your local people are going to shop on e-commerce and they're going to come to you for the experience.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're a physically located business, you have to, just like e-commerce, attract people from all over the place. And you do that by showcasing your experience, positioning yourself as an attraction worth visiting. And you can't attract people from far away if they can't find you from far away.
Yep.
And when you're in a community of businesses, right? Like I grew up in a tourist community.
Mm-hmm.
When you're in a community of businesses and your main street, for example, has a business directory, right? So like, let's say I'm a person looking to go on vacation with my family. There's 3 towns on my radar that are supposed to be kind of cool. And they all have like a central core draw, right? Like there's a cool waterfall, or like, oh, there's a cool, I don't know, botanical garden or something, right? They all have a core thing. And then they all have a shopping district with like restaurants and shops. And they all have a directory on their kind of high level. And I'm deciding where I want to take my family, my precious money that I worked hard for, my precious time that I'm not going to get back, my precious memories that I want to capture. And one of the websites, one of the high levels, they have great websites for all the businesses, and I can totally envision my family having a wonderful time there. The other one, I don't know, are these businesses open? Like,
yep.
Can I tell what kind of food I'm going to get to eat? Like, what are the prices? Are you open? Like, did you close during the pandemic and I don't know? Like, which one am I going to visit? Which one am I going to take my time and my money and travel?
Which one are you going to give a chance? Yeah.
Exactly. Right, exactly. Why should I work hard to keep you in business? No.
True.
You to put in the work to earn my business, right? And that's what I say to people, like with the website part, don't make it hard for people to use your website. People will work hard to earn money.
Yeah.
They are not going to work hard to spend their money.
Give you money. Yeah.
So if you make them work hard to spend their money with you, they're gone. It's the same thing. Like, this isn't new.
Mm-hmm.
Why are you making it hard for people to give you their money? They're like, hey, can I give you my money? And you're like, nah, my website's too slow.
Just
you can't find what you're looking
wait in line
for.
Here. I'll take your money in a bit.
Like, don't make people work hard to be your customer. Make it easy.
Exactly.
Be where they are. They're looking online, be online. Or don't, but then don't complain about it.
Yeah. You're always going to
have customers.
You're always going to be wondering what customers you could have had, right?
Right. So, exactly. It's a lost opportunity cost.
Yeah. So if Charlie has convinced you that you need a website, or that you can improve your website and improve your strategy online for growing your business, attracting new customers, and all of that type of stuff, I highly recommend that you check out her Instagram, Third Eye Web Strategies on Instagram. You know that she's done this strategically because the website is the same. Pretty easy to find you. Weird that the person who says she can make you easy to find on the internet's easy to find on the internet, eh? Charlie is over at thirdeyewebstrategies.com. You can check her out there. Charlie, thank you so much for being here. This is awesome.
Thank you for having me and creating this forum for this conversation. I hope that it finds the people who need it.
No problem. I believe it will. All those people out there who are watching. I think this video is going to get some good views. Charlie's going to help me share it around. So
yes.
So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and look forward to seeing you next week.
All right. Bye.